Hello, everyone. We are live. It's 3 o'clock on the 14th of October, and this is Dr. Nelson from Central Florida. And we are here with Brian. Let me hit
Hello.
live on Instagram. There we go. And if you could please put in the chat where you're watching from, I appreciate it. Let us know where you are in this world. Let's see who we have here. Rani Boo, Juliet, Rick. Hello, everyone. Okay. Where pigs fly farm. This is interesting handles people sometimes have.
Yeah.
Main runner. Good afternoon. Earl Ish. I believe that's how you told me to pronounce it. Uh, that was from Ohio. Rick is in Miami, Florida. Looking forward to seeing you, meeting you in person, Rick, next month. If anybody is going to Hack Your Health, we will be seeing you there. We're going to have a booth, Kiltz Health. Please come and say hello to us. FD Opa from Holland. Wow.
Mm.
Hello. Brad from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That's I guess it's the better known Lancaster. There's a Lancaster in California, and there's a Lancaster in Massachusetts, which I live very close to Lancaster. I have a cousin who lives in Lancaster right now, but Lancaster, Pennsylvania is the better known of the Lancasters. There's, I guess, multiple cities in the United States called Lancaster. And
Yeah.
Juliet is in Springfield, Missouri. Hello, Lexus. How are you doing? Minnesota. Lexus, I don't know if we have you scheduled with for one of our many live streams. If you're not, please email Alia at drkiltz.com, Alia at drkiltz.com, and let's get you scheduled for one of our live streams, okay? FD Hola, is that from, I think there's a town like that in California. LA Santiago, this is St. John. St. John's, I don't know if you mean the island of St. John in the Caribbean or a city called St. John's.
Mm.
Mr. Cast Iron from Arkansas. All right. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I see some of you already put some questions, and I'll try to get to them. Larry, Florida.
Mm.
Chicago, Larry, Earl. By the way, did you get your costume already, Rick? Cheryl from Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. All right, Cookie from Maryland. Looking forward to see you, Juliet. Yes, I know Lancaster, right? Oh, there's one Lancaster in Ohio that also. It's
Mm.
good to know. Hello, Thomas. Rally. Do you get your hat already? Slow. I don't remember if it was black or gray, but we have them in black and gray. Uh, are
Nice.
you? And if you're going to hack your health, wear your hat. Okay. All right, Terry Sue. All right. Just trying to catch everyone before we start talking with Brian. Uh, all right. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. And if I tell you where I bought this glasses, you would probably, you probably believe me, but all right. Let me put this question up. We have a very limited amount, so if they make it two Hack Your Health, we'll have them at Hack Your Health. If not, you can order them from our website. We'll have a couple at least there. All right. Hello, Brian. Where are you from? Where are you right now?
Well, hi, Dr. Nelson. Thanks for having me on. I live in Virginia right now, near
Okay.
Fredericksburg, Virginia. So it's about halfway between DC and Richmond. I've been here for, boy, almost 20 years now, but I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, and lived in southern Michigan for a while there, southeastern Michigan. So I lived in the Ohio, Michigan area for probably close to half of my life, and then the second half of my life so far, I've been in Virginia. Um, so yeah, that you know, there's a big difference between like Virginia is not really the South, but it's like the start of the South. So the
Mhm.
difference from being like more up in the northern Midwest to the South, it was a bit of a change when I first moved out here.
So besides maybe driving through Virginia, the only time I remember being in Virginia was actually very close to Washington D.C. because I was staying in an apartment from that that someone that worked at the Pentagon at the moment uh, lived, but it was in 2004, and I was really running away from a hurricane in Florida. It was a giant hurricane that was coming. I had three small kids, and I just put them in a van and I left the house, hoping I would come back to it. Uh, but I don't remember if it was Francis. It was this giant hurricane that was coming
Mm,
straight to my house almost, and I just put the kids in the minivan with my wife and just went to Virginia, stayed there until the hurricane passed, and then came back down. Thankfully, the hurricane when really it was like a category 4 uh, at the moment, but it didn't hit category 4, probably hit category 1 and didn't come uh, that close to my house. Like very often happen with hurricanes, they deviate and their ultimate destination is always different.
yeah.
uh, So I came home with a generator that I still have for emergencies. Over the years, that's 2004 and 4. So 21 years, I still have it. I still use it when necessary, but I've only started it like 4 times for hurricanes since I bought it. Anyways, that's more than people wanted to know. The last thing I'm gonna ask you is, have your YouTube channel here. Obviously, has your name in big bold letters there. How do you pronounce your last name?
Nowicki.
Nowicki. Okay. So, Brian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? And I know many people here probably already know you because you're a frequent visitor, and I've heard some of your story a couple of times. Uh, Tell us your carnivore story, how it has helped you, and what you're doing to spread the word.
All right. So my name is Brian Nowicki, and I'm known on YouTube as Wick Goes Carnivore. Wick is just kind of like an abbreviation thing for my last name, so that's kind of where that came. And I guess it kind of plays a little bit with John Wick, the movie character. So anyway, it's really to tell you a bit about my story. I got to go back a ways. Like when I was in high school, I was really fit and played sports, played basketball and some other things. And, I was really thin and fit. But I did start to have some issues with my ankles and stuff. So some health related issues that way, but no other like health type of issues back then. But I didn't eat necessarily the best diet back then. And it just hadn't caught up with me yet. Right. So get past high school and I'm not as active as I used to be. And I started to gain weight again, eating probably more of what you would consider the standard American diet. And it was starting to catch up to me. So I started to gain weight and some of the issues with like pain and stuff like that started to come on. Into my, especially late 30s into my 40s, I would start having issues with flare-ups of inflammation within different joints, like my knees, my ankles, my elbows, that kind of stuff, right? And I'd get like a week or two where if it was in my ankles or my knees where I really couldn't walk for like a week or two because I was really swollen, that type of thing. And I continued to gain weight. And through my 40s, I tried several different diets, didn't really find anything that would work for me. At one point, about 8 years ago, I did lose quite a bit of weight, but I quickly gained it back because it wasn't really sustainable. I was basically cutting how much I was eating, not eating enough food, not getting enough nutrients. And it got to the point that I just couldn't take that anymore. And I started eating back the way I was before and gained all the way back. So this takes me now up to, I guess I was about 48 years old, 2022. And that's when I kind of hit my rock bottom moment where I was the heaviest I've ever been. I had no energy. I was always in pain.
What was your weight?
Bed.
Your highest weight?
It would be about 380 pounds, somewhere in there.
All right, sorry. I continue.
That's okay. And so, I couldn't sleep very long at night in bed. My hips and my back would get really sore. And within a couple of hours, I was finding myself going downstairs, sitting on a recliner and spending the rest of the night trying to sleep on a recliner because I was just too sore to lay in bed. I snored a lot. I developed something called AFib actually in 2018. And by 2022, it had gotten to the point that I was having 2 to 3 episodes a week. So there's a couple different types of AFib. There's one where it's considered more permanent or persistent, I guess is the word that they use, persistent, where you're in it for long periods of time. And then there's the kind I had, which paroxysmal. Did I say that right?
Paroxysmal atrial fibrillation.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. And that was the kind where you'll go into it and then you go back out of it on your own type of thing. And that's what I had. And I was having at least 2 to 3 episodes a week where I'd go into it maybe for an hour, maybe for 6 hours, something like that. And then I'd go back out of it on my own. I was also taking medication. I was taking a blood thinner for it because of the risk of stroke. And so I really was at the point that I needed to do something. And, you know, I feel like I hit my rock bottom moment where like I was ready to do something. And first I started looking into keto. I heard of different people that I knew that was doing the keto diet and was losing weight with that and getting healthier. And I found Dr. Ken Berry's channel and I said, I'm going to give keto a try. So I started to do keto, maybe lost a few pounds in like 3 months of doing keto. Didn't really lose a whole lot, but I still had a lot of the other issues, the pain and so forth. And in this time period, I continued to watch Dr. Berry and learn more about the carnivore diet. And then I started watching some other people and their experiences with the carnivore diet. And I did more research about carnivore, and I decided that carnivore was actually right for me. So in July of 2022, I went on the carnivore diet, and that's when things really sped up for me. Within a couple of weeks, my wife said, you know what, you don't snore at night anymore. I was sleeping all night in bed. The back pain and hip pain was basically non-existent at that point. And I mean, I have been doing this for a few years where I would only sleep for like an hour or two in bed, and because I was in so much pain, and within a couple of weeks it was gone. So I had that. Probably within the first several weeks, I noticed that the joint pain was gone and I wasn't noticing any flare-ups. Of course, sometimes you'd go a month or something without a flare-up before you would get the really bad swelling. But over time, I found I wasn't having that anymore. I wouldn't get the flare-ups where I'd have to sit there for a couple of weeks, not being able to walk. So that kind of stuff went away. And I also noticed I was not having AFib episodes anymore. And before carnivore, I could make myself go into an AFib episode if I was working out with weights too strenuously. And I started to test that on carnivore and work out really heavy, and I would not go back into AFib. So that's probably the biggest thing for me was the AFib. But, you know, over the next 3 months, I lost 60 pounds, 60, 65, I think it was 60 pounds. And all these things I've noticed, you know, that were better. My energy finally, after about 3 months or so, probably was starting to get better, pick up. I wasn't feeling like mild depression like I had before. That seemed to go away. I seemed like a happier person. So I had all those types of things happening. Probably within 6 months, I was at a point where I would say to my wife, like after work, hey, do you want to go do something? And she'd look at me like, what are you talking about? Like, you never want to do anything. And that was just the difference in the energy and my mood, being happy and that kind of stuff that I didn't have before. And that probably was about at the 6 month period. So anyways, that all started July of 2022. We're now in October of 2025. So I'm over 3 years on the carnivore diet. Over the last year, there hasn't been very much in terms of weight loss, but I have lost like, I think it was 3 inches in my belly button. So there's still changes happening. I still have body fat to lose. That's been kind of slow in certain areas, where other areas it's gone really well. But in certain areas like my belly, it's been a little bit slower. So that's slowly still happening. But I'm also gaining muscle, stuff like that. So that's why I think that the actual weight on the scale hasn't changed much. And I'm now over 3 years without any AFib episodes. My cardiologist took me off the blood thinner close to 2 years ago, I think it was. And I've seen him about once a year just to check on everything. I've done stress tests, echocardiograms, that kind of stuff to make sure that everything's good, and everything's been looking good there. Um, I I did have high blood pressure. I still have it a little bit. I have less medication than I used to before I started carnivore, so that improved as well. I think that pretty much covers most of the health type of improvements.
Only that, that you know, we don't want to give the impression that the carnivore diet is a miracle, but uh, in some people it comes very close, right? So,
Hmm.
from what you said, AFib was the main thing, and I'm sure it bothered you. When was the last time you know that you had an episode of AFib?
It would have been in July of 2022.
That was the last time? Okay, great.
Yeah. It was
So,
probably about the first week or two of being on carnivore that I was still having them, and then it went away.
wow. And for those that do not know what AFib is, I'm sure everybody has heard it, or atrial fibrillation is when the heart normally has a natural pacemaker in the atrium. There are two sides of the atrium. There are four chambers in the heart. The top is the atrium, the bottom is the ventricle, and there's a left and a right side. And at the top of the atrium, there is a natural pacemaker. That's where the stimuli comes in to uh, contract the muscles. Okay, it's an electrical stimulation, and it goes down a series of cables uh, to because it's an electrical system. And with atrial fibrillation, what happens is the signals are not being completely transmitted down to the ventricle. So the atrium and the ventricle sometimes are contracting at different times. In particular, the atrium, the contraction no longer is all at the same time, but very disorganized. So it's not pushing the blood very well down to the ventricles. And because of that, it can cause all kinds of problems: congestive heart failure, uh, pulmonary hypertension. It can cause swelling in the extremities when it causes left ventricular uh, congestion, and multiple other things. By itself is not a big deal, although some people can get very symptomatic. But one of the worst risks is about 10% of people with atrial fibrillation will have a stroke. Why? Because when the atrium is very disorganized, the blood that's supposed to be flowing through and being pumped in a regular basis to the next chamber, then it pools and it can get in, can easily develop a clot. Whenever your blood is static in an area, you have the risk of developing a clot. And so that's why they give anticoagulants. Nowadays, for people that have chronic atrial fibrillation, they put uh, something called the Watchman, uh, which basically creates a barrier in the area that the blood is pooling most of the time. And then you don't need an anticoagulant because ideally you're filtering out the clot. Anyways, uh, So within the first
My
week, you had an episode, and then you haven't had it. By the way, you've been doing carnivore longer than me for about a year. I
mm,
started June 29th, 2023. So 12 plus, probably 12 and a half months. Do you remember the date in July?
it was July 1st.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
start of the month. Yeah, because so I was
So
doing keto,
almost
so
exactly
I
12
kind of
months.
transitioned into it, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna start carnivore on July 1st. So made it easy for me to remember the exact day.
All right. So I started 29th of June. So only a year and 3 days. Actually, just a few days, 3 days less than your anniversary. Anyways, well, very, very good.
Mm.
A lot of good changes. You mentioned depression, weight loss, more energy, sleep apnea, and you haven't. You. It's not like you had gotten down to the 200 pounds and your sleep apnea was gone within a. Did you say a few months or a few
Um,
weeks?
I mean, within a couple weeks, really.
Weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Chronic pain is a big one. One of my
yeah,
things with pain is you don't necessarily die from pain. But it's a very uncomfortable thing to have all the time, right?
yeah.
And that also went away. So, what does a day? How many times a day do you eat?
It depends. It's usually once or twice, and I'm not like a set on I have to eat this amount of times in a day. It's more of how I'm feeling and I guess what I eat. And so typically when I'm really hungry, that's when I'll eat. And if it's more so beef, just plain beef, there's a better chance that I'm not going to eat later, especially if I eat a good amount of it. If for some reason I didn't make enough food to like get fully full, I will probably want to eat a second meal. Or if instead of eating beef, I had chicken or pork or something like that, or fish or something, most of the time I end up getting hungry later and I eat a second meal. So it kind of depends, but it's based more on how I'm feeling if I want to eat if I get hungry enough to eat a second meal or not.
Uh, do you have any favorite cuts?
Well, I would say ribeye is my favorite, but it's also pretty expensive. So I do go to Costco and try and get the bigger slabs of meat and cut them into steaks myself. And a lot of times I will get the New York loin because it's at least a few dollars cheaper than the ribeye. And so that's probably my mainstay is the New York. And then I eat a lot of ground beef, burger patties, that kind of stuff. I feel my best when I eat beef, but I don't want to restrict myself to just beef. So I like chicken wings. I like chicken thighs, different chicken with the skin on it that has a little bit more fat to it. I like to eat those types of things. And I'll have pork every now and then as well, bacon, that kind of stuff, eggs, obviously. So I'll eat those kinds of things.
Any fish?
Usually if it's fish, it's going to be salmon
Okay.
or it's more on the seafood side, but I like both lobster and crab legs.
All right.
Shrimp too. I should say shrimp. I eat shrimp.
So I have salmon probably. It could vary month to month. It could be once a week or once a month. Uh, Usually, I'd like to eat raw fish, sashimi style,
Mm.
and I normally eat in the afternoon once a day. But this morning, after the morning live, I got hungry and I had a ribeye steak, which probably is the most tender ribeye I've ever had. For
Mm.
happened to have it uh, thought, and I think it wasn't that big. It was like maybe a 12 ounce. So it was very early this morning. So I might eat again today, maybe not. We'll see.
Mm.
What is there any exercise routine?
Uh, Nothing that's consistent. I I will sometimes get into lifting weights for a little bit and then I kind of stop and drop off. Um, and I actually injured myself sprinting like 2 weeks ago. It'll be two
Okay.
weeks tomorrow, and I tore my hamstring, so I'm recovering from that right now. So there's no exercise activity really going on right now. Uh, but I will say I tore it pretty bad, and the healing with being on carnivore is amazing. Tomorrow will be 2 weeks, and I'm pretty much walking normal at this point. I'm still going like up and down steps with like half a step, but it it's been amazing. Like it should take me 2 to 4 months at my age to recover from a torn hamstring, and I think at this point it's gonna be closer to 3 to 4 weeks to recover.
I was probably in my 30s when I had a severe hamstring sprain, and probably took me 3 to 4 months to recover from that. I was
Mm,
playing softball, was running hard, trying to extend a single into a double, and
mm,
I mean, it was very painful and
yeah,
took a long, long time to recover. Uh, but I have also experienced the healing. If I get hurt or in whatever way, it could be even a cut, things heal much better. Uh,
yeah.
all
I've
right.
noticed that with cuts as well.
Uh, let's take some questions here. And if I have insulin resistance, should I watch my protein intake on a carnivore diet? Do you have any opinions on that, Brian?
Well, I think you want to find the sweet spot for your protein, whether you have insulin resistance or not. Uh, like protein is a big part of the carnivore diet, and it it's important, but you also don't want to have too much protein. I think that's going to kick in gluconeogenesis to a point that goes beyond what you really need, right? In making glucose. So I think you need to find the sweet spot for yourself. And there's different calculators out there that can help people based on their BMI and that kind of stuff to figure out exactly what is kind of the ratio they should be in. And that's what I typically go by. But I think that protein is important no matter what to get it right.
So I like the KISS principle. Okay. Keep it simple, right? Uh, the KISS, and you can try to figure out what the other S for. But so when you're starting carnivore, just eat until you're satisfied and stop eating when you're full and wait a few hours before you have your next meal. You should never be hungry. Maybe at the beginning for a few days you might be hungry an hour, 2 or 3 after you have a full meal, but those are either you're still withdrawing from carbohydrates or just bad old habits because you shouldn't be hungry after having a full carnivore meal, right?
Mm.
Especially if you have a good amount of fat and protein together. So if you're a newbie, just eat your choice of meat, usually beef with whatever fat it comes, and stop when you're full, eat again when you're hungry, which should be anywhere from 4 to 6 hours later, right? Keep it simple. Sometimes, if you have insulin resistance and you have developed either fatty liver or prediabetes or diabetes or any of these problems that are related to insulin resistance, then try to troubleshoot, trying to play with the macros, whether you're having a lot of diarrhea because you're having high fat, you're still getting fat adapted, but just eat, keep it simple. If you want to troubleshoot a problem, then sometimes lowering your amount of protein, increasing your fat might be your best option to begin with. Uh, if you're noticing your blood sugars are going high. As far as the amount of protein, just eat until you're full, but a lot of people talk about 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of ideal body weight or lean body mass. So for most people, that's going to be somewhere, for most men, probably around 150 grams a day. For most women, it's over 100. Probably no one should have less than 100 grams per day. Depending if you're a small, petite woman, then you could go as low as 80, but probably just over 100 grams per day will be the number. Again, that depends on your height and frame, basically. All right. I hope that answers the question.
I want to bring something up. I'm glad that you mentioned the fatty liver thing,
Uh-huh.
because according to my blood work, I had fatty liver before carnivore,
Okay. Hmm.
and I don't know if this is just the way it worked for me, or if I'm sure that there's other people that I've heard this with too. Sometimes it can be hard to know if you're really hungry when you first start because of that and the whole insulin resistance thing. And I think that probably the best thing for people to keep in mind, and you can correct me if you think there's a better way to do this, but if you've eaten that meal and a few hours later you're hungry and you really shouldn't be, but you're hungry, it's probably just the signals in your brain telling you you're hungry when you're really not. And if you eat some kind of fat like butter bites or bacon or something like that, it tends to take that craving away and helps you get by. And then over time, you have less of those cravings happening.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, probably at the beginning is when that's going to happen more frequently because you're, first of all, whether you're getting a keto flu or not, basically you're going through withdrawals from carbohydrates, right? And you might feel like you're hungry an hour after having a full meal. Really, you shouldn't be. You're still digesting what you ate. Your stomach is not empty by any means. There is no one that should have an empty stomach unless they have some disfigurement of the of, of your gastrointestinal anatomy. So yes, having some butter with some salt might take care of the craving because at that moment there's no logical reason why you should be really, really hungry. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of habit. And but I would say if it's less than 4 hours after you ate, maybe three, because some people might, you know, truly be hungry 3 or 4 hours later, especially at the beginning. I don't think after you've been doing carnivore for a while, uh, you say you eat once or twice a day, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes you eat one time and you don't eat until the next day about the same time, right?
Yep.
Uh, so your hunger signals definitely decrease. I had done 6 months of strict keto before I went carnivore, and when I went carnivore, it was like a switch that was thrown completely as far as decrease in hunger. A third or fourth day after I had gone carnivore, I woke up one day feeling great and knowing for a fact that I wasn't gonna eat that day. Uh, so it can happen definitely. All right. So Lexis says, I've been eating a whole foods, high fat, proper human diet, and I feel absolutely fantastic, guys. Congratulations. Uh, like I said before, please email Alia at drkills.com. If we haven't scheduled you, I would like to have you in one of our live streams. And all right. Cam's dad, how much of your health knowledge do you get from YouTube? If I didn't watch YouTube, I wouldn't have found about the surgery for my cancer. I had histotripsy, ultrasound to dissolve tumors. I take it these were tumors in your liver. I don't know if you're directing that question to Brian or me. Uh, about you, Brian? Uh, how much of your health knowledge comes from YouTube?
I would say there's probably a good portion, just like any other type of knowledge. Like let's let's look at a car, right? Let's say you've got a problem with your car that needs to be replaced and you don't know how to do it. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to go on YouTube and look for a video on how to replace that part on your car. It's kind of the same thing with health. You know, I don't know that it should necessarily be different. You're going to find a million different videos about different ways of what is healthy and what's not. But you got to start somewhere, and I think that that's a good way. Just even searching on like Google or something and finding articles and reading different articles and reading about the biology of the human body and science and even reading some of the different studies, even I don't really truly believe those studies, you can gain so much knowledge from all those things. So I think you can get all those things, but YouTube is definitely a big part of it. I mean, I use YouTube for a lot of things.
All right. Uh, if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat. I'm sorry if I skipped any. Uh, so if I don't see one of your questions, put it again, please.
I missed the live stream this morning. I was sleeping. What happened?
It's
What I
okay.
missed?
Uh, so Dr. Kiltz announced, well, he had mentioned it before as well, uh, that we're going to make a documentary, and seems to have some executive functions in that in that, in that documentary.
Mm.
We'll see. uh, all right. So let me bring. I already showed your channel. Please go and subscribe. Week Goes Carnivore, and I put the link to your channel in the description of my personal channel. It's not in the description of the others that where you might be seeing this. Let me check. Uh, Star Blue from Oakland, California. And Diana Acevedo. This is my friend, I think. Diana, how are you? All right. Uh, don't give away my secrets, Louis. Uh, all right. I died laughing on Kiltz replay, and all of us are in it. When should we come by your house, Dr. Nelson, for filming? Well, soon, hopefully, we're going to have the Deltona studios of Kiltz Health. More of that to come. All right. So I do have something to bring up here. You want to set this up, the picture you had sent me, or that you have ready for to bring it up?
Yeah. So I don't know. These pictures are probably about 4 or 5 years apart. Obviously, in one, I don't have any facial hair at all up here, but uh, I wasn't quite at my heaviest here, but I was pretty big in the picture on the left. And then the picture on the right was actually in the Smoky Mountains a year ago. And so I was 2 years into carnivore at that point.
How
And
tall are you?
I am 6'4". 6'4".
6'4".
Yep. So,
Okay. Yeah.
yep.
One of my good
So,
friends is about 6'4", and I know exactly how I feel when I stand next to him because I'm barely 5'7", probably not even quite 5'7".
the funny thing is, I'm looking at these pictures. The picture on the left was also in the Smoky Mountains because I see the Smoky uh, moonshine distillery thing in the background. My family does go to Smoky Mountains a lot, so um, it's interesting. Obviously, on the left in that blue shirt, I wasn't doing much hiking. On the right, that was after doing like a good hour and a half hike up to this waterfall, and I did I did really well. It's the whole carnivore recovery and energy and all that stuff, and not having pain. On the left, if we did some sort of hike, probably the next day I was dealing with an ankle brace and swelling in my ankle. And on the right, I think that particular time, that was the last time we went to Smoky Mountains. In a week, I think we did like 5 or 6 different hikes, and I never had any issues at all with my ankles.
Very good. I was in May. I was in the Smoky Mountains because I was in Meatstock. We'll be there again next May. Meatstock 2026. We'll be in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Uh, so that's very good. It's funny you mentioned this is not your biggest, and I always mention this because this is also not my biggest. Now, why do you think that is? And why do you think that is, Brian? You tell me first. I have an opinion on that.
Why that is not your biggest?
Yes, and you also mentioned that picture is not your biggest.
I would say, at least for me, because I shied away from pictures when I was so big. I didn't want pictures of myself.
Of course, yes. And that is the reason. When you become, I know for a fact that was not my biggest, but at my biggest, I don't even know exactly how much I weighed because I didn't want to step on a scale, and I didn't want to have a picture. And I'm not a shy guy. But when you're that big, you don't like to see yourself in pictures.
Yeah.
So, but when we go to Hack Your Health, come and take your picture with me. I will have no problem. I still have, I guess we're still dealing with problems. Carnivore hasn't made me perfect yet, but I am so close. It's scary. Okay.
Yeah. That's the thing too, I mean, it's really about your health and improving your health, but if you're like me, you spent 48 years of your life eating the wrong foods and making yourself unhealthy. It's not You're just not going to go to perfect health overnight. It's going to take time, even with doing the right things. And I'm getting healthier and I'm getting better. I've lost weight and I'm getting healthier, but I got to expect that I'm going to continue to get healthy as I do the right thing. It's not like it just happens overnight.
Definitely, it is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Uh, just having a better quality of life than you were having before, it is worth it. Uh, what does your family think about it? We are now 3 years after you made this decision. What does the family say?
Yeah. So when I first started doing carnivore, there was a lot of skepticism. My wife was like, I'm not sure if it's a good thing, but it's, your choice, that type of thing. And as she saw me losing weight and getting healthier, she's like, I see it seems to be working, but I'm still not convinced that it's right. The saturated fat and all that stuff that you always hear, right? And over time, that's completely changed. Um, she still eats her standard diet, but it's funny because like if I have blood work done where they check cholesterol levels and stuff like that, mine are actually better than hers, and mine are supposed to be worse because I'm on the carnivore diet, right? Um, and it never used to be that way. Mine actually were worse. So, so you know, over time they've been more accepting. My kids definitely have been accepting of it. Nobody in my immediate family does carnivore. I do have an uncle that started doing carnivore a few months back, and he's been doing really well with it. I do have my daughter's fiance does a lot of carnivore and keto at times, so that's good. But there's nobody really in my direct immediate family, like my kids or anything, or my wife, that are doing carnivore, this type of proper human diet type of eating. But they respect what I do and they see the benefits that I've had. But it's taken time. Like at first, there was a lot of being skeptical about it, which makes sense.
Uh, Jojo uh, bought some picanha, and yes, Walmart has picanhas. Usually they're about 2 to 3 pound size, whole. And I don't know how you're planning to prepare it, but first, have you had picanha, Brian?
I have. Well, the first time was at a Brazilian steakhouse, and my wife, speaking of my wife, actually bought it for me once when she was at a store and she saw they had it, and so I was able to, make it, prepare it, and eat
How
it.
did
So
how did
it's
you
pretty
cook
good.
it? How did you cook it?
Oh gosh, this is months ago, so I got to try and remember. I pretty sure I cooked it on a pellet grill, so
Did you
I
cook it
don't remember.
whole? Did you cut it into steaks?
Um, yeah, it was um it was more of like a large steak type of thing. So it was like pound and a half, I think, or something like that. So um it was probably a small whole thing. I didn't cut it into anything smaller than that. But
Okay, so one and a
um
half pounds is small. If the whole
yeah.
picanha was 1.5 pounds, I've had, uh, I think I have some picanha in the freezer right now, and they are probably about 3 to 4 pounds, so they are larger pieces. But my recommendation is this: if you're gonna cut it into steaks to grill or do on the pan or even air fryer. Cut it along the grain or with the grain, right? Into the steaks. And that way, when you cook it and you're going to eat it, you're going to be cutting against the grain. That's going to make it feel more tender. If you're planning to do it into skewers, giant skewers, like they do in the Brazilian restaurants, and you're gonna cook it over fire, then cut it into pieces against the grain. If you're gonna be slicing it along the skewer, like they do in the Brazilian restaurants, that's also gonna be against the grain. That's gonna be the best way to texture to feel that is tender. Even in Brazilian restaurants, sometimes they cut it wrong. I'm not an expert, but I watch an expert on picanha, Guga, if anybody knows him from YouTube here, and he is Brazilian. So he knows. He's an expert in steaks, cutting steaks, and I learned that from him. So that's how I cook it. Christy from Eating Wellness likes to cook it as a roast. I don't like the results of that. I have done it as well. So I prefer to cut it into steaks and cook it whichever way you're going to cook it. Whether, sometimes I'll fire up the grill or do it on the stovetop.
Yeah.
So, question for Brian: do you remember why you chose me for your first carnivore interview?
Yeah. So on my YouTube channel, Rick was my first interview. I've done several interviews now. I couldn't even tell you how many. Not like Dave Mack level, but I've probably done 50. I'm thinking somewhere in there. And Rick was my first. Boy, why did I pick Rick? I think one of the first things that stood out to me was that Rick had been doing the carnivore diet for so long. I think at that time he was right about 40 years or just short of 40 years. So that was part of it. And I'm glad I picked Rick because that was probably the hardest interview I've ever done, because it's the first interview I ever did where I was the interviewer, and I struggled with it. I remember right off the bat with the recording. Luckily it wasn't live, but I remember I was like, I have Rick, and I'm like, what? Wait, let me start that over again. It took me like 3 times to say Rick Rodriguez with me. So that's how bad it probably was. But he made the interview so easy. He made me feel more comfortable as we're talking and so forth. So he was a great interview. And you'll find he ends up being the first interview for a lot of people. I think part of that is because he's so easy to talk to and does a great job.
Yeah, if you have a problem saying Rodriguez, or Rodriguez, you can just say Guataman or Quackman. He'll respond to those two. Oh, it's Brian, my favorite doctor. Stop. Wish I would have seen this earlier. Well, you can watch the replay. Let me see. Did I have a question here? Yes. We already went over that one. Brian is the king of bloopers.
Yes. So I had a live stream, and it was what did we call it? It was it was me and Greg from My Weight Loss Life. We used to do a live stream every week. It was the low carb football party. And the one time I started a live stream saying This is the low carb football farty. It
Okay.
just lost it for like the next 2 minutes. We just laughing. We couldn't get back on track. It was like the start of the live stream. People were probably tuning in and like, what is this? What's going on? So I'm infamous for that. I knock my microphone down all the time too. I haven't done it today. I haven't done that in a while actually, but I used to do it all the time. I'd be sitting there in the live stream and
Yeah,
boom, I knock the microphone down.
those things happen, and it's okay. I actually prefer doing a live stream than a recorded session. If I'm doing an interview, it's going to be live. I I'm not going to be doing editing, and I'll just have you live. That's why I'm here Tuesdays and Thursdays live. Uh, so
Mm.
I all right, Mike. Have a great day too. And we're about to finish. We're over the hour. For those of you, and by the way, don't I don't know if I've knocked my microphone. My microphone is right here.
It might have been something I did a couple weeks ago. I do have a live stream I do on Wednesday evening, so
Yes, tell us
that's
about your
probably what I
channel and
did.
your live streams. Uh,
Mm.
in case you don't know it, this is his channel. If you search for him, especially if you spell his name correctly, even if you don't spell it correctly, I think YouTube will. When you search for him, you'll find him very easily. But go and subscribe to his channel. Uh, check it out. Do you have? You also have a Facebook page, right?
I do.
Okay.
And I think I got it under my links now after we were talking, so it might be in there. But yeah, YouTube is probably my bigger thing that I do. I'm pretty consistent with it. I typically come out with new videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. And then Wednesday evening, I have a live stream with Johnny from the Carnivore Champion channel. And we do a live stream together. So that's pretty consistent with YouTube. And then Facebook, I tend to post a lot of motivational, accountability, that kind of stuff, things promoting carnivore diet. And then I have a private health and wellness group within there too, where I have people in there, and we just try and keep each other motivated and accountable, so forth.
All right. And if you have a story of healing, you just start telling your story. If you're here, it's because you're watching on YouTube and you have a YouTube channel. Even if you don't have any content there, you have a YouTube channel. So use it. Start posting, or if you use mostly Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any of those other social platforms, just start telling your story. Thank you for being here. For those who are part of the Kiltz Mighty Tribe and have either of the pay memberships, the $10 or the $30 a month, we're going to be live within the community in about 25 minutes because we moved our Zoom call a little bit earlier because our guest is from the United Kingdom and wanted to go to bed a little bit earlier. He's 6 hours ahead, so 6 hours, 5 hours ahead. Anyways, thank you for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And those who are in the course, we'll see you tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. All right. Thank you very much, Brian, again for being here.
Yeah. Thank
You
you,
have
Dr.
any
Nelson.
you have any last words?
Really, I'd just say, like we were kind of talking earlier about how it can take time to heal and so forth. And could take time to lose weight. Like, just keep working at it. If you're out there and you're feeling frustrated, just keep working at it. Know that if it took you years to get to the health that you had, it's going to take years to get back to a very healthy state. And everything you do every day is going to help to push you further and further towards that healthy state. So keep at it, keep doing it, and keep going strong.
All righty. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brian. We'll see you those within the community in just 20-some 5 minutes. Okay. Have a good day and eat meat.